Hello and welcome to the European Report. Here we are in the European Parliament, in the heart of the European Union. And in today's programme, we're discussing the Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions movement, known as the BDS, in their threat that they pose to Israel and also for peace and security in the Middle East. And in today's programme, I'm joined by Tomas Sandell, the founder and director of the European Coalition for Israel, Branislav Škripek, from the European Christian Movement and a Slovakia MEP. So welcome to the programme. And also Joël Rubinfeld, President of the Belgian League Against Anti-Semitism. So welcome to the programme. I'll start off with you, Tomas, because we definitely missed you on the last programme. And I know that you've had your own battles that you've fought, a personal battle, that I think you'd very much like to share with our viewers. So it's great to know that you're healthy and you're back with us.
Well, thank you, Simon. It's good to be back on the program, looking a bit different this time. And this comes with the territory. When you fight for Jerusalem, sometimes you get some bruises, but you should have seen the other guy. No, seriously, I had surgery three weeks ago. Everything went well. And obviously it takes time in my forehead for the scars to heal. But apart from that, I'm fine. And the next 6 consecutive weeks, we have travel every week. So we're going full steam ahead.
Excellent. So our viewers need to keep you in our prayers, particularly during this time of recovery. Yes. And it's great that you're back. Yeah. Also, you are organising the documentary organised by Gordon Robinson that shows the 50th anniversary of the Six-Day War here in the European Parliament. Would you like to share with us?
Sure. No, I think the next few days are very important for us. In the Gregorian calendar, of course, we know that next week will mark the 50th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem. This is something that sadly in this Parliament will be marked as 50 years of occupation. Which we find very detestable. So we said, let's do a celebration, even here in the European Parliament. Let's raise the flags, remember what happened. So we decided to do it by showing a documentary. It's called In Our Hands, The Battle for Jerusalem, produced by Gordon Robertson of CBN. He will be here himself to present the film, and tomorrow at 6 o'clock, we'll hope to have a full auditorium watching this amazing story, what happened 50 years ago. Also, a few days later, in New York, we are doing a breakfast meeting with the mayor of Jerusalem, Nir Barkat, and Jacques Gauthier from Toronto, speaking about the sovereignty of the old city of Jerusalem. As we are here in Brussels, we are calling the missions at the UN, and I think we'll have some 35, 40 ambassadors and senior diplomats there. Also in an environment which is not very friendly to Israel, but also there, what an amazing joy it is to be there with the mayor and really to celebrate this event, which we all feel is so remarkable.
Fantastic. And Branislav, it's great to have you back on the programme, and thank you for the work you do in protecting Christian freedoms across Europe, particularly here in the European Parliament, and also for standing up for Israel. Can you share with our viewers some of the work you've done regarding Israel in the Parliament recently?
I am persuaded that Israel have the right for defending its own statehood and building it up as an independent and sovereign state. And I am a member of the delegation for Israel here in the European Parliament, of course. I did voted against this labeling and BDS. And for this plenary session now, today in Brussels, there is a resolution, and we speak about increasing anti-Semitism moods and behavior here in Europe. Throughout last years, many Jews from Europe are still facing increasing and differentiated ways of either persecution or attacks. So, according to statistics, in 2015, almost 10,000 Jews emigrated out of Europe to Israel. I have prepared my own motion for resolution which addressed this fact, but it didn't come through. It was voted against. But I brought some amendments to a joint motion for resolution. I do pray for the peace of Jerusalem because this is a challenge given in the Bible. Let's pray for the peace of Jerusalem to see the peace of the world. I think many Christians just don't reflect this exclamation and biblical fact. And next week I'm looking forward to be a participant of Jerusalem prayer breakfast, where politicians meet with different other important people from the business, from different movements. We will come together and pray in Knesset.
Fantastic. That's great. Wonderful stuff, Branislav. And Joel, it's been a while since you've been on the programme, so I'm very pleased to have you back. Can you tell us what your new role as president of the Belgian League Against Anti-Semitism involves?
Well, it means fighting against anti-Semitism under all its forms, because anti-Semitism, when we look back in history, it's like a virus. It adapts itself to the environment. In the Middle Age, anti-Semitism was directed against Jews based on their beliefs and religion. And then 19th and 20th century, it was attacking Jews based on their race, ethnic grounds. And today we see that we are facing the third big evolution of anti-Semitism, which is anti-Zionism, attacking Jews based on their nation state. And so that's what we are facing today. And when you see in Europe, Jews are again killed because being Jewish, like in 2012 in Toulouse, Mohamed Merah, when he killed 3 young kids in this Jewish school and the father of 2 of them, after he said, I'm killing Jewish children, Jewish kids, because Jews are killing Palestinian kids. So same thing with Medine Mouche, same thing with most of the cases we are dealing with in Belgium, but in Western Europe in general. Today, Jews are attacked based on the third big evolution of anti-Semitism, which has a name, anti-Zionism.
And Joel, in today's programme we're discussing the BDS movement known as the Boycotts, Divestments and Sanctions. Can you please explain what this movement is to our viewers, but also the negative impact that this has on Israel in terms of peace and reconciliation between the Israelis and the Palestinians?
Well, this movement is precisely the illustration, one of the illustrations of the third evolution of anti-Semitism, and it's trying to isolate the Jewish state and trying to portray Israel like the South Africa at the time of apartheid. So they are trying to do this, trying to boycott, but not only products, but boycott Israeli in general, also boycott Israeli people. That's what they are trying to do. And it's an evolution. We had in 1975 at the UN, the infamous UN resolution 3379, which equated Zionism and racism. Then we had in 2001 in Durban, a UN meeting, which was also a further step of, you know, trying to put anti-Semitism, being anti-Semitic based on international law, based on human rights. That's what they are trying to do with Israel, to portray Israel like a Nazi state, and also to portray their supporters, all of us here, Jews and non-Jews alike, who are supporting Israel, like their collaborators. So that's very dangerous, because virtually they are putting a target in the back of everyone who is supporting Israel. So we have to name it. Before to cure the disease, we have to name the disease, and BDS is part of the global anti-Semitic movement, and maybe I will have the opportunity to say it later. I'm not the only one saying this. Very high-profile people and organizations are saying the same thing.
Absolutely. And Tomas, how important is it that the European Union and its institutions work against the boycotts and sanctions concerning Israel, especially when we consider what happened on the continent of Europe over 70 years ago in Nazi Germany in the 1930s with a boycott against Jewish businesses and produce?
Yes, let me recall, as Joël was speaking, I remembered that the first time we met was actually at Durban 2 in Geneva. And I believe that was in 2009, if I'm not mistaken, 2008 perhaps, 2008. And we also have to remember that this new form of anti-Semitism, it came out of a UN conference in 2001. The European Union obviously has a huge responsibility, being in Europe, being this institution which was built, as we so often say, out of the ashes of the Holocaust. Let us also recall the good things that the European Commission does. Earlier this year, in January, we had Katharina von Schnobein, the EU coordinator against anti-Semitism, here on the program.
Absolutely.
And she gave lots of examples of what she can do, what the Commission can do to fight anti-Semitism. And I think that she has gone even beyond what any of us could have expected, because she has been so explicit when it comes to linking anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. But obviously that is not enough, and we know it's not one EU coordinator against anti-Semitism who defines EU policy, so a lot remains to be done in this chamber, in the other European institutions. And I'm sure Branislav would agree that not enough is being done. There is an automatic criticism against, and this is an important distinction, against, as Joël said, the State of Israel. So I think the European Commission and also the European Parliament are rather clear when it comes to raising awareness of what is happening to the Jewish communities in Europe. But then on the other hand, they make this distinction, good Jew, bad Jew, and as I said, there are three types of Jews in the world now. You have, a Jewish person like Joël living in Belgium, in Europe, is a good Jew. Technically speaking, he doesn't have a link to Israel. Then you have Israeli Jews, which are, bad, because they are citizens of this Jewish state. Some call it apartheid state. But as if that wasn't bad enough, then you have Jewish people living in the biblical heartland, Judea and Samaria, disputed territories, as they call it here, occupied territories, which are really the obstacles to peace, even to the extent that it's almost questionable whether they are human. And I think this process of dehumanization of people is very, very dangerous. It's a slippery slope where we have to be very careful, and you have to be very careful in this chamber, that we don't reach that stage where we call people, children, fathers and mothers, obstacles to peace.
And Branislav, so much of the evangelical church in kind of Western Europe and also in the United States has adopted the BDS movement and called on their members to divest from Israel. As a leading Christian leader here in the European Parliament, what influence can you have over Christian leaders to think twice before adopting the BDS?
Look, we cannot say this is the unified attitude of all Christian churches. No,
absolutely.
Let's make it distinctive. Okay, this is one branch of evangelical churches, but an attitude of many Protestant churches and so-called apostolic churches, evangelistic movements, are very different. And they do support Israel, and they are against BDS. So let's focus on these groups. But also we need to bring more dialogue, even with this evangelical alliance. And International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem, Slovakia, like this is an example, decisively denied this labeling, because this was kind of beginning of Holocaust. It's not so far away, just a couple of tens of years, how shall not centuries, but number of years, 70 years ago. So this is still a state ground of Israel, and the state of Israel have right to label its produces as Israel produces, because Palestine is under the patronage and governance of Israel. It's not yet state of Israel. So I think this is the answer. We need to also lead dialogue amongst Christians and explain more what this is ongoing problem. It brought loads of problems to Palestinians. So I think the greatest thing what we need to address there is that if we want to bring peace, and I'm happy for any initiatives that Mr. President Trump has made, after years we could hear that Palestinian representative and Israeli representative make an exclamation, let's sit down and negotiate. I think this is promising, and we need to stress that if there are two states, there needs to be two nations, and both nations need to respect each other. There is no way that in any Palestinian documents or official proclamation would be, let's evict, let's destroy, let's get rid of Israel as a state. So this is another way how the peace can come.
Absolutely. Very well said, Branislav. And Joel, you're pretty much leading the fight against the rise of anti-Semitism here in Western Europe. And we know that the issue of Jew hatred not only affects the Jewish people, but also affects European civilization. Can you explain to us in what ways the BDS movement steps over into being anti-Semitic?
Well, you know that criticizing Israeli policies, or whichever policy, from left, center, or right party, when there are some different coalitions, it's not being anti-Semitic. But there is a red line, and when you cross this red line, it's anti-Semitic. And who better than Nathan Sharansky defined those red lines? He said, criticizing Israeli policy is not being anti-Semitic. But when you cross the 3D red line, it is. What are those 3D? It's demonization of the Jewish state, which is the case, because BDS is trying to portray Israel like an apartheid state and like even a Nazi state. Delegitimation of Israel, they are trying to do this. Of course, that's the basic goal of BDS. Even one of the big supporters of the BDS movement, Norman Finkelstein, acknowledged it 2 years ago. He said that the problem with BDS is that it's not about so-called occupation. It's about the fact that they don't recognize the very existence of a Jewish state. And the third D is double standard. So let's speak about Judea-Samaria. Some people call this occupied territories. For me, I regard this as disputed territories. But let's call it, for this example, occupied territories. You know that there are a lot of occupied territories in the world. Tibet in China, regarding Europe, Cyprus. Part of Cyprus is occupied by Turkey and other territories. There is no movement at all in the world regarding labeling those products. But BDS is trying to do this. And when I told you that I'm not the only one calling this an anti-Semitic movement, let me quote Michael Sommer. Michael Sommer was the chairman of the German Confederation of Trade Unions, the biggest trade union umbrella in Germany. He said in 2013, as long as I am head of this organization, there will never be a resolution that say, Kauf nicht bei Juden, because that it is what about BDS. Kauf nicht bei Juden. Other example, the very famous writer Umberto Eco. He said about BDS, quote, is a form of racism. And more recently, the CDU, the German party, political party of Chancellor Angela Merkel, they voted a resolution calling BDS movement anti-Jewish and reminiscent of early actions taken by the Nazis. And believe me, when CDU and when Michael Sommer, both of them German, they are speaking about this because it recalls them what happened in their own country 70 years ago, listen to them. Listen to them. And that's what they are trying to do. I don't want to put all the BDS supporters in the same bag. I think that they are definitely the ideologue of this movement. They are deeply anti-Semitic. I think most of the supporters of them, they are just useful idiots.
Thank you very much for that, Joel. And, you know, Thomas, do you think the tide is actually turning against the BDS movement now, that, particularly in the church, considering that in the United States, that the United Methodist Church, US members voted to leave the BDS movement, and the US campaign to end the occupation? And also we've seen this month the Church of Scotland move against the BDS. Does this mean that the church is now winning this battle against the BDS?
Simon, I always said that the BDS battle is winnable, and I even went as far as say that it works in our favor. Those of us who are trying to explain the position of the Jewish state, because the arguments, as Joël was just explaining, are so weak and they just don't make up the argument. So I never had a problem of engaging in discussions trying to say, well, why is BDS not the way to peace? You know, why is BDS promoting the conflict instead of finding solutions? And I think what you just mentioned are some illustrations of how people are, you know, finally coming to the conclusions that this doesn't win anyone. Still, I think it's very important to say that we have to remain very vigilant. There is, and Joel, you mentioned it also, this looking at anti-Semitism as a cancer cell that mutates. So even though we say in 5 years from now people will not speak about BDS, I don't think that would mean that the battle that we are in would cease to exist. There are always new expressions of how you explain your hatred, basically, towards the Jewish people. And if BDS is, you know, proven to not be effective in this cause, there will be other ways and other social movements that will find something that would appeal to the zeitgeist, to the thoughts of the day. So BDS may be winnable. We may be in the process of winning that war. But anti-Semitism and this ancient Jew hatred is not disappearing anywhere, sadly, and that's why we need organizations like European Coalition for Israel and members of parliaments like Branislav and Joël in the work that he does.
Branislav, come down to the last 3 minutes of the programme. In terms of our Christian viewers, how can they get alongside and support brave and courageous MEPs like yourself who are standing up for Israel and also standing up against the BDS movement?
So how can we encourage this?
Absolutely.
Be open and speak up. We have regular meetings of the delegation for Israel. And I think we also need to go as a member of this delegation to other committees where whenever questions like these are spoken through. And we need to also to name clearly that whatever moves which will bring unrest or simply cause more and more division is any good. So I think BDS only brought, we can judge the tree according to the fruit. It's a biblical phrase, and it's very clear that this does not bring any peace, just causing even problems among Palestinians and Israelis who wants to cooperate. So why not to stress that in Israel there is a huge number, thousands of people who wants to have a peaceful agreement with Israel, and also the Palestinian people who works in all the projects which Israel runs, they are better on it, simply. And now they are brought into more and more poverty. Because if this is such much, labeling simply brought reducing of the produce of Israeli companies. I don't think this is any good. And we can say this only causes more and more unpeaceful attitudes and anger. But I think we shall rather focus on whatever support for either violent actions, either terrorism, either whatever which bring disagreement. There are peaceful Palestinians who wants to bring better solutions. We shall focus on it.
Excellent, very good. And Joel, I give you the final say in the last minute. You know, as Christians on this programme, we want to declare that not only are we in this fight with you against the BDS movement and with the nation of Israel, but also against the rise of anti-Semitism, and that you can rely on us to also fight your cause.
Yeah, of course, we have a lot of friends, like all of you here at this table, fighting for justice. Just about fighting about justice. You know, we are still today celebrating the writers among the nation who 70 years ago put their life and the life of their family at risk for saving Jews. And it's common knowledge that everybody sees them rightly as the best of the humanity. I would like to tell to every people watching this program and beyond that today you don't take risk, or at least much less risk than before, than 70 years ago, to stand up, to say, I will not allow, no pasaran, anti-Semitism, no pasaran. So stand up, go further, go on, and we need to be, of course, reactive regarding BDS. We should maybe follow the French example. In the French law, it is illegal to boycott a country, according to, that's the first thing. But also to be proactive. And to be proactive, it's maybe to follow the Czech example. The Czech parliament last week, they recognized Jerusalem as the capital of the Jewish state. So maybe it should be a good idea. Czech Republic took the lead. We need to follow, and with our friends, with all over the world, and in Europe in particular, with the Christian community, we can prevail. And actually we will prevail. It will be a long way, a long path, but we know that at the end of the day, justice is prevailing, good is prevailing on evil.
Excellent. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being my guest on today's European Report. And I just want to thank you for watching today's programme here in the European Parliament. It's important that we make a stand against the BDS movement, and the best way we can do that is not only to buy Israeli goods, but also to visit the great nation that is the State of Israel. So thank you for watching today's European Report.